Today I'm going to be cooking a King Arthur roast. What the hell is a King Arthur roast? It is a roast beef, but the particular joint we're going to be using is a chuck and ribeye roast. My stomach just growled there. That's how hungry I am. What makes it really special is that the ribeye fat cap is tied back onto this chuck roast. So when it cooks, that fat will just render, make it really delicious and juicy and everything that I'm looking for in a roast beef. I've got a massive problem. My fat cap's missing. So this is going to be more like a skinny Arthur roast. But I think I've got a solution on how to fix this. So let's get to it. So the ingredients you're going to need is the beef, herbs, garlic, salt and pepper, oil, Mirepoix, and beef stock. Right, because this is missing its fat cap, that means it's lean. There's not a lot of fat there, which means it could dry out a lot. So what I'm going to do is baste this first. Nice big pan. And then I'm gonna oil up and season the meat. I always prefer to oil the meat, not the pan. I'm a little bit gutted because I was really looking forward to this, because Dexter, the breed of the beef that I'm using, is one of my favorites. It's this really nutty flavor. The Dexter is like a short little cow, which is, I relate to.
You relate to a short little cow?
I am a short little cow. But it's very tasty. So I'm gonna sear the meat and give it a really nice color on all sides. So I bought this online, but I've let the butchers know. I'm a little disappointed, but you know what? I'm not gonna let this go to waste. I'm sure we can turn this around. And I bet a few of you out there have had this problem where you've ordered something online and it didn't come as you expected, or there's been an issue with something or another. But let's turn this around. We're not gonna waste it here. Ooh, string came off. Actually, the strings come off. That can happen when you sear things. Right, what I'm gonna do is turn that right down now. Turn that off actually, because it's got a nice color on each side. And then I'm just gonna add in some crushed garlic. Take out the frustration of not having my fat cap here. And then because it's not got any fat, I'm gonna add the fat back to the dish by basting it with an absolute F-ton of butter. So, and make sure this is on a nice and low, like with any basting anything, it's gonna be on a low temperature. Now that the beef has been basted with all that butter, I'm going to pour it all over the top of the beef. And I've set it in a roasting rack that is above all my Mirepoix. I'm actually going to add in some more herbs just to really give it a lovely flavour. Actually, we could do with, because again, missing a lot of fat, I'm going to just pour in a little bit of olive oil and a splash of red wine underneath. Normally in my other roast videos, I say don't use olive oil because it has a low smoking temperature. However, we're going to cook this roasting joint on a low temperature, so at 160 degrees centigrade. Because I'm going to cook this on low and slow, and it's going to take a little while, so I reckon about 12 to 15 minutes per 500 grams of meat. So this is about just over 1 kilo of meat, so I reckon it'll take about half an hour. But I want to make sure that it's cooking at the right temperature, so I'm going to use a digital thermometer. This one's by Thyme, and it has, this one's a quad, so it's got 4 pros, but I only need 1. And I'm just going to insert it directly into the middle part of, that's about the middle of the meat. I'm going to set this to 50 degrees. This isn't a sponsored video, but they kindly sent me this to play with, and I love it so far. But I'll put a link in the description below if you want to have a play with yourself. Play with yourself? Don't play with yourself. Have a go yourself. Right, let's set this up. I want this to be at 50 degrees because I know there's going to be resting time after. So there we go. It's at 12 degrees right now. Let's get it in the oven. Right, I can see that is at 49 degrees, so it's about to come out because I've set it to 50 degrees centigrade. It's time to get my roasties on. I'm going to do some roast potatoes to go with this roast beef. So I pre-boiled these roast potatoes. If you want all the details on how to do roast potatoes, just click on the link for our previous video. And I've got a little tray covered in duck fat. And what I'm going to do is air fry these. That's right, air fry them. Because my oven's busy with the roast beef, I'm going to put these into the air fryer for maybe 15 minutes while the meat is going to be resting. So make sure there's a nice even layer of potatoes. I'll save those ones for the kids later. And I'm going to add a generous amount of salt. And I roast those on a high temperature, or basically air fry them until they're super crispy. Fantastic piece of kit, an air fryer. In they go. Look at that piece of meat there. I need to get another cloth. Right, here we go. Yeah, it looks nice. I think that definitely I am missing that fat cap, you know, that golden, delicious fat that's rendered over the top. But I'm sure this is going to taste delicious. Let's make a sauce. So I'm just going to put the meat onto a tray and let that rest for 20 minutes at least. All the vegetables and herbs have been stewing in the wine and the beef stock. So you can see there's a lot of juice in the bottom. The herbs are cooked. Everything should be fairly soft if you cut it fairly small. So what we're going to do, put this tray directly onto the stove with a bit more beef stock and really bring out some of those pan juices and the beef flavor to make like a beef gravy. Bonus points if you're able to roast with lots of beef bones in the bottom as well. That gives you a really lovely beef flavor. So very carefully put that onto the stove and heat it up. I'm going to add in a good squeeze of tomato paste. And just give it as a good stir in. Some good quality beef stock. Oh, you know, it's great when it's all thick and jelly-like, collagen. Right, we're gonna let this stew out a little bit longer on the stove. You just wanna break up and pick up anything that's in the bottom there. Any fronds, I'll pick it up. All right, this has been bubbling away for a little while now. Now we need to strain it. So we're gonna take out all the mirepoix into a colander, into a bowl, or you could just empty this into the colander in the sink if you're in a rush. Making a gravy like this is always gonna taste better than using a pre-packet or a sachet or powder. Ooh, smells delicious. You press out as much juice as possible. And all of that gravy is gonna go into my new favorite pan, a little saucepan. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can reduce it until it's a nice thick consistency. But for me, my dad is from up north, so we like gravy, and I'm talking about like pints of it all over our roast dinners. So I don't want to reduce this too much because I want to have a good quantity of gravy. So what I'm going to do now is thicken it by adding a roux, or at this point, if you don't want to do a roux, you could use a gravy powder. But first of all, we're going to take off, you see this layer of fat? We're just going to carefully skim that off and discard it. If you're doing this ahead, it's much easier to put this all in the fridge and then discard it in one solid piece when it solidifies, that fat solidifies at the top. Take this probe out, give that a wash. And I'm going to just put this onto my carving tray, which is the meat looks so small on there. Just cut away any of those. You don't want to get bits of string in your food. Just discard those. And then what we're going to do, because it's rolled this way, we're going to cut it against the grain that way. So nice and thin pieces. Lovely. That is lovely and pink inside. And because we did it a nice slow roast, you can see how nice and even it is, cooked all the way through. And I've let this rest for at least 20 minutes, but look, you can still see how there's steam coming off it. It's still warm. So let's serve it up. Ooh, look at those. Look at those potatoes. If you had any doubt that you could use an air fryer to make roast potatoes like this, I mean, putting that myth to bed. Oh, they're hot and crispy. This gravy is now thick and unctuous because I added that roux into there and whisked it in, checked the seasoning, added salt if it needed. I'm just gonna pop it into a big jug of mine. Pop that on the side there maybe. I mean, I don't even know if I want to plate this up. It looks so good like this. But I am absolutely fascinated by this joint, so I'm going to give it a taste. I might need a knife. I'm going to cut off a piece and try it in this gravy. It's got a really nice crust on the outside. My takeaway for doing a King Arthur roast would definitely be that you want to slice it thin, because that chuck there is quite tough. So slice it nice and thin, but it's got an amazing flavour. And I knew it would. Dexter beef is incredibly nutty, beefy, delicious. So there we have it, it's the King Arthur roast. Well, it should have been a King Arthur roast, but that's what happens when things don't always go your way. But as a chef or a cook, when you're in the kitchen, sometimes you just gotta use some of that knowledge or take some advice on how to overcome some of those problems. So we cooked it low and slow at 160 degrees, and we've got this really lovely pink meat in the middle. My advice would be to cut it nice and thin because it's still chuck, so it's going to be quite tough. Definitely use a oven probe or a meat probe to take away any sort of amount of guessing. I think that is the hardest thing when it comes to roast, is getting the timing right. And what I love about that probe is it gave me amount remaining, so I knew exactly when I needed to get my roast potatoes in. And look how good my tatties look. Right, I cannot wait to get the gravy all over this meat and tuck in.
Hey Liz, what greens would you serve with this?
Greens? Get out. Let's just have this and lots of potatoes. Well, check out this video that we did on sides for roast dinners. There's definitely a couple in there that I recommend will be perfect to complete your meal. So one last thing before I head out this week, let's do a gravy pour. Oh. Right, let's tuck into some of this here. That was a big piece of meat. I need to slice that a little thinner because that was definitely a mouthful. Just needed a little bit more salt, but that flavour, that Dexter beef is glorious. Is it my favourite joint for roast beef? Absolutely not. I think compare the King Arthur stands nothing against the sirloin or a bone-in ribeye. But it's delicious, it is more affordable, and it is still a showstopper if you bring it out for a roast dinner. If you want the full details for the recipe, I'm going to add it to my website on auntielizcooks.com. But if you head over to my Patreon, I've actually uploaded a very in-depth meat cooking temperature guide and also a guide on meat probes. So if you want to head over to there, you do need to sign up, but I guarantee you're going to find lots of juicy information there that you won't find on my website. Shout out to all the viewers that are back here this week and you've lasted to the end of this video. Big love to you all. I hope to see you again next week. Bye.